Hi, it's Sean, and this is the 3-month vacation. What's the connection between a car wash and how we move forward quickly? Joseph Nunes and Javier Dres wanted to explore how people progress towards a goal. Now, I know it sounds really weird, but they chose a car wash to conduct their experiment. The participants were given loyalty cards for their car wash, and then both groups had the same car washes to complete before they were entitled to a complimentary bonus wash. Here's how the experiment rolled out. The first set of participants was given a card that had 8 stamps. The second had 10 stamps. However, 2 of those stamps were already marked. As you can tell, they are headed towards precisely the same goal. But how it is presented, that makes the difference for each party. As you probably guessed, and guessed correctly, the group with the pre-stamped card was more likely to get to the finish line. But why is this the case? I'd say it's just a prompt. A prompt that is given in advance. It somehow seems to ease the required work. When the journey seems a little shorter, our perception takes over. We are likely to do the same task and then do a little bit more. When a prompt is in place, the client feels there is a little less to do and ends up doing more than they expected. Let's take an example. I'm currently learning French, and it's not easy. In the past, when I learned a language, I would do so with flashcards. The flashcard system is where you are shown a single word, and then you have to remember that word in your target language. In English, the word would be lamp, and in Spanish, it would be lámpara. But now, since I'm learning French, it is lampe. The beginning of any journey is quite exciting, and it's the same for a language. As I started out, I added all the words to some flashcard kind of software. But then I had to do a lot of work over a long period. Based on the amount of time I'm putting in, I expect to go from elementary to upper elementary to intermediate, and then upper intermediate, and all of this is going to take between 16 to 20 months of sustained work. But it's not just the learning. You have to add in new words, then their translations. And if the pronunciation is crucial, then you must find the correct pronunciation and add it to the flashcard. Learning a language just becomes a very daunting process. It's hard enough to keep motivated, but all of this work becomes very tedious. However, let's say there is a system that gives you complete sentences. It's still a flashcard system, but you don't have to add the pronunciation. Instead, the sentence is read to you and then you can repeat it. In this second instance, where you have to do less of the donkey work, you are likely to make significant progress. Almost everybody will fall off the bandwagon without diligence, but people are likely to get much further when they're given enough of a buffer, or in other words, a bit of a prompt. But why is this prompt so important? The obvious reason why it is important is because we lose steam as we go through a learning process. We start out all incredibly excited, but learning new concepts can be exhausting. It takes a fair amount of willpower to show up consistently, and then we are faced with this mountain of information. This information has to be assimilated, and then there is this percolation process. It's like water torture, drip, drip, drip. And only once we go through these steps of assimilation and percolation can we implement what we are learning. Hence, when a client has to fill in 8 stamps on their little card, it seems like less work than 10 stamps. The amount of work required might be exactly the same, but the perception that you're doing a little less seems to spur you on the journey. It causes less tiredness. And as you're listening to this, it might seem obvious, but stay with me, because there is a second reason. The reason why the prompt is essential is that it negates the nonsensical concept of hard work. We are told time and time again that we have to work harder, but we have no proof that working harder makes anybody better. In many cases, all it does is make you more frustrated with the learning process. Since the goal is to create a tiny increment, giving the client one small step is much better. And if that one small step already seems to be partially completed, then they feel, oh wow, this is doable. And here is a real example from the storytelling course that is in progress. The assignment was to get the clients to connect just about any story to any article. Not a related story, but any story to any article. So the assignment looks like this. You write a personal story in about 10 to 15 bullet points. Then you take that personal story and you connect it to an article. And finally, you have to figure out 3 ways, not just one, but 3 ways to connect that personal story to that article. As soon as you read what you need to do in this assignment, the sea doesn't part and angels don't come in. Instead, you're faced with a sense of dread. That's because you have to write a personal story. To write a personal story, you have to dredge your memory to remember something that could be slightly interesting, something that is exciting, not putting people to sleep. After that, you have to then summarize it in 10 to 15 bullet points. When you read that assignment in a single line, it seems like it's doable. Go out there, find a personal story. But somehow hidden or interwoven within that single line are all these activities that you have to do to find that story that's interesting and usable. And even if you get past that first section, now you have 2 more to go. As you can tell, it's all important for the storytelling process, but it's so tedious. It's so time-consuming, not to say energy-consuming. And you've only finished 1/3 of the assignment. You still have to connect the personal story to the article, and then you have to drum up 3 different ways to connect that personal story to that article. Even just listening to it, you're like, what's happening here? What do I have to do? Learning is not necessarily hard work. It's all these instructions that involve us putting in so much effort that makes it hard work. But what if we were to turn this assignment around a bit? If we use the prompt concept, you tell the client, okay, you don't have to write any story. You are given the story. You can also give them 20 different words or phrases, and they can choose any 3. In this second version, the goal is still being achieved. Your plan wasn't to fry the client's brain. By ensuring that you give them a prompt, which is a lot of the steps, then they only have one tiny bit to achieve, and you make sure that they reach their destination. Remember, we're still dealing with perception. In the car wash story, it was merely a factor of perception. The activity was exactly the same. The only difference was how the audience perceived it. In this case, when you're using the prompt, you give the client as much help as needed, and the challenge is a very small portion of the entire assignment. It's because they don't have to do so much work that the tiny task becomes more manageable. When you consider a course of learning, it might take weeks or months or even a year. Having these small tasks, these tiny increments, is what nudges the client to move ahead bit by bit. Strangely, the client will do more work than normal if you turn things around. So, let's go back to the assignment. We had to do 3 things. The first is write a personal story in about 10 to 15 bullet points. Second, Connect that personal story to an article. Then drum up 3 different ways to connect that story to the article. Now we'll turn it around a bit. And it looks like this. Here is the story for your assignment. You don't have to do anything. Here's the story. Secondly, you don't have to come up with the words if you don't want to. There are about 20 words. Feel free to choose any 3 to connect the story to the article. And finally, if you're done with that, write a personal story in about 10 to 15 bullet points. The client takes the story that you've given her, then she picks 2 or 3 words, she connects that personal story to the article, and all of this could be done in probably 10 minutes. So now there's all of this time with nothing else to be done. What is she going to do next? Write a personal story. That personal story, which was such a mountain in the way, now it's just like a bonus thing. That big assignment for the day, it's pretty small. And that personal story, yeah, why not take it on? There is a similarity when I'm learning French. The goal is to learn just 25 new sentences per day. No one remembers 25 new sentences per day, but it is to familiarize yourself with the pronunciation and the sound of the language. And of course, something's going to your memory. But because I don't have to spend all of that time putting together all of the elements, I do more than I expect. Instead of just 25 sentences per day, I may reach 50, 100, maybe even 200. Granted, that is excessive, but the point remains. We must examine the goal that we're trying to achieve for the learner. When we overburden the learning process, we are not doing ourselves or the client any favor. Why? Because if you give them so many steps to do, they're going to make a lot more mistakes. Every step might end up with 2 or 3 mistakes, and if they've got all of these subsections to deal with, suddenly it's just chaos for them. But for you as a teacher, it's also a lot more work. Everything becomes tedious. That's why you need to resort to prompts, where you give people something that's pre-stamped. The next time you give a client an assignment to do, break it up into stages. Think of it as a car wash. Think of it as getting many stamps. And then instead of just giving them 2 stamps, give them 6 out of 8 stamps and see how that job gets done, and then they do a little bit more. That's the magic of the prompt. Try it today. Do less. Have tiny increments, and you see how people move faster, have more energy, and want to come back to do even more than ever before. That's it for today. C'est tout pour aujourd'hui. Let's do a summary. When we are preparing some kind of learning for our clients, what we tend to do is give them a lot of work. When you write down what they need to do, it might just seem like 3 sentences. But when you expand it, it might comprise of 8 separate elements. And each of those elements won't be the same size. Some of them will be huge and very demoralizing. We have to get them to move ahead bit by bit so that they have the energy and they have the excitement of coming back to do the assignment the next day. And probably the only way you can go ahead with this task is to put more stamps on their car wash card, so that the assignment is pretty small, but then there might be a big assignment on the back of it, which is not compulsory. However, because they have the time and because they have so much energy, they might tackle the second assignment as well. And so you get the same job done, but you approach it in a different manner. And that's how learning becomes less of this do hard work, keep practicing, all of these boring things that you heard when you were growing up as a child. Learning is more about design than anything else. If the assignments seem simple, then your perception changes as a learner, and you're more eager to come back even though the learning process might extend for weeks, months, or even years. That's it from me. Let's find out what's happening in Psychotactics land. Paris, that's what's happening. We are headed to Paris, and on the 18th, 19th, and 20th of November, we have a strategy workshop. Now, what is this strategy workshop? Most of the time when we're doing things, we're just grabbing anything that we get. It's LinkedIn, it's Instagram, it's social media. Let's write some articles. There is no cohesion around the strategy that we're putting forward. And so we don't have any benchmarks. We can't figure out what to do next. And every single thing that comes our way seems interesting. Okay, maybe not interesting. It seems intimidating. So often clients tell me, if I just knew what to do, I would put in the hard work. And I'm not afraid of hard work. I just want some kind of strategy. Well, this is it. Strategy. And the cost of the workshop is probably what you'd pay a coach for just one session in the whole year. Instead, when you sit down with Renuka and me, yes, Renuka is going to be part of it, what we're going to figure out is exactly what your business needs to do and where it needs to go. And we're also going to look at things like your life, because everybody starts off and talks about all these 6 figures and 7 figures and all of this nonsense. But really what you want is a happy life. You want time that you can waste, time to spend with your family, and at the same time, that focus on work, because work gives us a great amount of satisfaction, but it also brings in the revenue. That's what the workshop is all about. There's also a meetup on the 22nd, and that is filling up fast. I know, it's just July. That's at the tail end of November, and it's already starting to fill up. Either email us or go to psychotactics.com, and you'll see there it says online workshops or worldwide workshops. You want to click on worldwide workshops and meetups, and that's how you get to Paris, France. And that's it from me. We'll see you in 5000 BC. If you're not a member of 5000 BC, then you can join. You just have to wait 21 days. So go to 5000bc.com, do it today, check it out, and I think you'll enjoy yourself there. Bye-bye.